Well, hi, everybody. I'm Natalie Perkins, founder of PAUZ. And tonight I'm very excited to talk about this topic because it keeps popping up. I mean, every topic keeps popping up. This one in particular, ADHD and menopause. And I can't even count the number of women and the conversations about ADHD and, did I always have it, or did it just come up later, or do I even have it, and is it just perimenopause? And so I'm thrilled that you are able to make time for us tonight. I am with Maria Soledad de Bilbao, and I realize I've never pronounced your last name fully, so correct me.
It's all good. It's all good.
uh,
You're
Expert
good.
in women's health and in particular ADHD. We are so lucky. You are a coach with PAUZ Health and have such experience, breadth, and depth in this topic, helping women. So thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
And so I thought like a really great place to start is just to explain what ADHD is, because I think that, there's a lot of assumptions or the labels thrown around a bit. And so just starting with, can you share with us, like, when we say ADHD, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so ADHD, or what we often, the short really, it's for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects executive functions. So the executive functions sort of sit behind your prefrontal cortex, and your executive functions do things like, for example, being able to focus and, memorize things or remember things. It has a lot to do with emotional regulation, motivation, and impulse control, and so many other things.
Yeah.
Traditionally, ADHD was studied and often diagnosed in young boys, and why? Because often they have the hyperactivity, they're disruptive in school, right? And so it kind of becomes these traits of like hyperactivity and disruptiveness becomes part of their profile, right? But in girls and women, ADHD absolutely looks very different. It is more
Yeah.
likely to show up as like maybe sometimes, like zoning out or daydreaming,
Yeah.
becoming overwhelmed by tasks, right? Sometimes it shows up as forgetful, where did I leave my keys? And,
Yeah.
just, getting rattled about things like this. Sometimes, showing up in being more sensitive or having more mood swings, right? And then there's this inner constant restlessness, right? It's not that at work hyperactivity, but inside women report that they feel that that hyperactivity still exists. They just
Yeah.
don't show it outside, right?
Well, yeah, for sure. For
Mhm.
sure.
And so, because of this, many women are actually missed, and many women, especially now, are being diagnosed later on in life. And the reason is because they are having children, and the ADHD is showing up in their children. And then once they become familiar with what's happening with their children, they're like, "Wait a minute, it's me too,"
Yeah.
right? And so then they get a diagnosed later on in life, right?
A
And,
hundred
and
percent.
why now? It's because it is that overload of the executive function, and once they have to take care of someone else's executive functions, then it becomes too much, right? Also has a lot to do with the hormonal fluctuation, which we're going to talk about,
Yeah.
like that a lot. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's really, really, really interesting because it's sort of this world of, perimenopause and menopause and ADHD, but it's clashing with the fact that women were just never diagnosed
Hmm.
uh, before either. So it's like it just complicates it to a whole new level.
Yes.
So though with ADHD, like, is it normal when we hear people saying like, I think my ADHD is getting worse with menopause? Like, is that something that, if you are diagnosed with ADHD, that you should be aware of that could happen as you enter into perimenopause?
Yes. And no, because it's not in your head. It's actually real, right? And to understand why we really need to look at estrogen. Often we think of estrogen as, a sexual hormone, right? That is related to our ovaries. But in reality, there's a lot of like estrogen is very important for our brain. It's protective. It helps us move dopamine. It does a lot of things, like that. If your dopamine is already compromised, then when your estrogen begins to either peak or lower, then you become to have a lot more issues. So yes, it is
And those,
perimenopause. Well,
yeah, and those issues are so similar to the issues in perimenopause, like the brain fog, troubles concentrating, mood swings. And so, is it the case that if you have ADHD in perimenopause, that those symptoms are even worse, or is it just that you're more likely to have them, or do we even know that with the research yet?
so the research is not quite there yet, although there just came out a paper that is speaking of that and sort of the limitations that we currently have. We have a lot of women that have spoken about this and
Mm-hmm.
the fact that neurodiverse women actually experience perimenopause a lot deeper in the sense of like, say, like 1 to 10 on different symptoms. They often will have more of that those tens than
Right.
lesser of those, and the reason is because of that connection of estrogen
Mm-hmm.
related to it's actually estrogen moves dopamine in the brain. And
Yeah.
when you don't have estrogen and you're already deficient in dopamine, or you don't have enough, or there is um, moments where you have a lot and moments that you have less, then it's a lot harder for your system. And then you're going to see that there's less attention, less memory, more mood, like more
Yeah.
brain fog, all of these things that are, you know, feeling a lot more than before.
Yeah. And it's that domino or the interrelationship between the estrogen and the mood swings and the inability to sleep that all interplay with each other. And then you layer, ADHD on top of that. And it's just a network of like, where do you even start to address what first, I guess.
Correct. And for some women, they feel that up to this point, they have been able to manage with everything. They have been
Yeah.
able to put, like strategies, routines for everything, right? And then all of a sudden, perimenopause comes in place, that drop in estrogen, and then the lack of flow of dopamine. And then all of a sudden, they're like, well, what just happened, right? And so
Yeah.
it becomes really difficult to actually deal with life.
Yeah. And I think, some of the most interesting things in the literature right now with women and ADHD is a couple things. So, one is, just the normal monthly hormonal cycle.
Mhm.
And, as that estrogen and progesterone, like the cycle of that and the result of your symptoms, but also the stages that a woman goes through from puberty to the reproductive ages to menopause, where we
Mhm.
see these exacerbations of the ADHD. And so, what can you share about like a typical cycle for a woman and what they might experience with ADHD?
Yeah, so like for individuals with ADHD that menstruate, that they have fluctuating estrogen and progesterone, they're going to have, different impacts and symptoms and emotions in different days of their cycle, right? So, for example, so we have, like day 1 to 14 usually is the follicular phase where estrogen actually rises, right? And for many women, this means that I have a lot of focus, I have better mood, I have, improved executive function in everything, like I have the ability to manage my emotions, like ovulation. Then we see that estrogen sort of peaking, and then the luteal phase, the last 2 weeks, we begin to see that drop of estrogen, right?
Yeah.
And this is very interesting because it's that week leading towards the period where neurodiverse women feel that, am I just like going crazy? I have poor sleep. My ADHD symptoms are, skyrocketing. Like I have increased anxiety, lots of emotional dysregulation,
Yeah.
inability to focus, brain fog, right? All of those kinds of things. My meds are not working. If you're on medication, you're going to feel that week leading to your period is is really not doing much, right? And because we see that drop in estrogen, right? Um, And this is going to be not only for women that are perimenopausal, but also for, women that are just have had their periods, or, even for women that are in their reproductive years. We
Yeah.
see a lot of women that because they can't take medication during pregnancy, but because estrogen and progesterone are increased during pregnancy, they're doing really well. And as soon as baby is born, all of our hormones drop, particularly estrogen and progesterone, and women really feel it, and they go into the postpartum depression, right? And for
Yeah.
women that are neurodiverse, actually hits them quite hard,
Yeah.
harder than neurotypicals, right?
And not
So,
to interrupt you, but I just read
mhm,
there was a study actually done in Ontario
mhm,
where they followed the women. I'm sure you saw it. They followed women during pregnancy, and
yes,
they saw a 10-time increase in the ADHD medication use,
yes,
which was shocking. So,
correct.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, if your ADHD, sometimes shows up as, low energy, inattention, anxiety. Sometimes uh, women feel better in the first, part of their period, right? But then the second part of their period feels like that roller coaster, right? That it's
yeah,
kind of, like going into crazy mode. For
yeah.
some women with ADHD, also PMSing is taking to the next level, right?
Right,
And it's
right.
called PMDD, which is
Okay.
like a severe form of PMSing, right? So if you're experiencing all of these things, it's not in your head. It's real. The research
Yeah,
really hasn't caught up that much.
yeah,
We have some research, but there needs a lot more that coming. In that paper that you and I were referring and talking about is addressing what we currently have, but where research needs to go from here on to actually service the women that are neurodiverse and help them
yeah.
through it.
And so I think that's really interesting, and probably, it can translate to a lot of things for women as it, the normal, so pre-menopausal, and you have that hormonal cycle, and you sort of are in that high and then the low, and you resort back, and so then in that low, you think like something's not right, but
Hmm.
then we go back to feeling better. So you're like, oh, I'm okay, right? So you sort of like push it down the road to deal with it, and then you enter into perimenopause, and it's just chaos when all the time, or you don't know when it's going to happen. And so, what I love so much about this time is I think while it can be a time of chaos and crisis, it sort of pushes us to sort of address a lot of things. And
And I think that is one of the reasons why you and I are doing this
yeah, we
to help
don't have to
women.
suffer.
Yeah,
Very different. We become different individuals all throughout our life journey, and so this is just a flag of a new version of who you are, and the maturity and the wisdom to sort of sort through what you want that to be.
exactly. Yeah. And so again, it's a transitional, like time in our life,
Yeah,
to then be able to fill the shoes for the other half of our lives, right?
yeah,
And so really, again, taking a moment to hone in and to learn about, yourself and what works, what doesn't work. That self-care is extremely important, right? Of your body, of your mind, and to bring it together in a holistic way,
yeah,
because we are holistic beings. Right?
yeah,
And so, in a sense, is a moment for us to pause,
yeah. It is.
and to really reflect on how we want to move forward, so our body and our mind work together
Yeah,
in unison, and we feel good in our own
yeah.
shoes.
And it's not to discredit or devalue the hell. Like, let's be clear, the hell or the fear or the pain or the emotion that you can go through in those lows, and trying to figure out how can I stay employed at my job when I can't figure out what I need to do today, and how do I keep my relationship with my partner uh, together still, and with my children, I don't feel like I'm functioning well with them, and I don't feel like seeing my friends. Like, it's not to downplay any of those
No.
experiences, only to provide motivation that we're all in this together, and you don't have to suffer, and there is an opportunity to really step into whoever you want to be in this phase.
Yeah, and to be able to actually advocate for yourself as well.
Yes,
You also need
yes,
to understand that you're
yes,
going through this and that there needs to be support. Like I'm dreaming of a time where we feel, that the workplace and our partners and our children, they all know what we're going through. I think that is just our generation that is really starting to talking about it and really putting the name to what's really
yeah,
happening to women, where before women did it in silence. And I
yeah,
think these kind of conversations bring light to the fact that
yeah,
we all go through it, but it's different for every single one of us.
yeah.
And so trying different things, it's good, and having these kind of conversations brings light to others to be able to actually do things in a slightly different way.
I agree, and I think the topic of ADHD is, in particularly important to give voice to and have it be, an open conversation because, the impact on your daily quality of life to struggle with ADHD and then hit perimenopause. I can't imagine what
Yeah,
that
we
is
see
like.
actually a lot of comorbidities that are attached to ADHD, and that being depression and anxiety, right?
Yeah,
And just being able to address that, because if you already suffer, and you have symptoms of depression and anxiety, and you hit perimenopause, and all of this world for you changes, then those is going to be exacerbated a lot more.
yeah,
And so just being able to name these things and make it so it's more normalized for women, that it's not taboo to actually talk about this stuff.
yeah,
And the fact that, again, they're not going crazy is
yeah, yeah,
not literally, like in your mind. Yeah, in reality, it's happening in your brain, and
yeah.
it's
It
a
is
change in
actually in your
hormones
mind.
and a drop on the availability of your dopamine. So it's happening in your brain, it's not in your mind. It's real, right?
It's
And
real.
so,
Yeah.
again, being able to name it and to have this spaces where women can open up and talk about their own experience is actually quite important.
Well,
It's where
and
we
I
start.
I think having experts like yourself that women can work with and help understand, ADHD, understand menopause, understand their options, and then help guide them through, personal plans of how they want to modify or change to thrive during this time is so important. So I'm so grateful that you're part of PAUZ.
Mhm. Thank you.
And yeah, I mean, thank you. And so for anybody that would like some support, Maria is available on the PAUZ Health platform. You can also DM on this live when it's posted as well. And